Hey guys, it's Sunday, so you know what that means. Another chapter or two or three of our book, A Taste of Your Own Magic. Book 2 in the Agents of A.S.S.E.T series. Book 1 was A Weapon of Magical Destruction. And clearly, I am not all here today. So, like I said last week, these chapters are pretty fast paced and we are racing to the finish. So, I'm going to dive right on in. We're going to do chapters 28, 29, and 30 today. And if there's time, we might go into 31, but we'll see. But at least 28, 29, and 30. All right. So, without any further delay, let's jump right on into it. All right. Chapter 28. If not for the soundproofing in the prison cell, the entire building might have heard Sage desperately screaming for her roommate. She frantically redialed Matt's phone, only to end up reaching voicemail. Of all the times to be magically immune, if she were anything but a Terra, Sage could have hitched a ride with an ethereal and rushed to Matt's rescue in the blink of an eye. What's the use of magic if you can't use it to save the ones you love? She couldn't bear to think of what that woman might be doing to her roommate right at that moment. Anger. Excuse me. My throat. The winds have kicked up and it's been allergy like crazy season. I'm on like 3 different allergy pills right now and I'm still getting tickles in the back of my throat. So I apologize. Let's see. She couldn't bear to think of what that woman might be doing to her roommate at that moment. Anger burned the tears in her eyes, evaporating them before they had a chance to drip down her cheeks. As bait, Matt would at least be kept alive. That small speck of hope was the only thing keeping Sage from flying completely off the handle. Who the hell was the mystery woman? Sage needed a face to give focus to her rage. Without it, she kept picturing Sylvia, but as much as she wished for the easy answer, the voice didn't belong to the Shadowrunner. Who was Luke's master? The question had plagued her through every encounter that she'd had with him. He was guilty by proxy, but the puppet master had to have been within arm's reach the entire time. The strange woman's voice replayed in her mind. Definitely cocky, completely mean, and surprisingly young. But none of that helped Sage to identify the owner of the voice. The mystery woman remained just that. She might not kill the bait, but her choice of words, "You play with my toys, now I play with yours," that was a threat not to be ignored. A terrifying vision of Matt, tied and gagged and completely helpless, tortured to the brink of sanity, sent Sage's heart racing. I'm actually going to grab a drink today. Okay. She fought to fill her lungs with air as panic threatened to cripple her where she stood. Why hadn't she seen this coming? This was her fault. She'd left Matt a sitting duck. She should have protected him. She'd promised not to bring her work home. If anything happened to Matt, she'd never forgive herself. Stupid, stupid, stupid Sage. Luke, innocent or not of intention, was their neighbor. Of course his master would know of her human roommate. The master would undoubtedly know all of Sage's pressure points. And instead of warning Matt about the potential danger of the Djinn's master, she had only told her roommate about the genie. She had to save him. Sage clenched her fists so tight her nails broke the skin of her palm. Pain short-circuited the panic, freezing her in place. She focused on the sensation, skin ripping, throbbing, blood rising to meet the offending nails. Breathing with purpose, she forced her heart rate to slow. Calmer for the moment, she called Matt's phone one final time, praying someone would answer. She'd even settle for the other conversation with the mystery woman if it meant confirming proof of life for Matt. But no one answered. After a few moments of focused breathing, she unclenched her fist and brought her hand up to the pendant around her neck. Sage hadn't wanted to use the weapon on Luke, but fate had just forced her hands. She whispered an apology to her mother's memory for what she was about to do, and then turned her attention to the upper corner of the cell, glaring at the little domed camera, knowing Ava would be watching. She said, "You want me to be the angel of death? So be it." Racing to the elevator, Sage planned her route. Down to the parking garage, borrow an agency car, and when she would break every speed limit in the city to get home to Matt. She could do this, and if anyone tried to stop her. Gray's face appeared in the elevator doors as they parted. Going somewhere? He asked, as if he already knew her plan. Out of my way. Sage tried to shove past him, but like a brick wall, he stood tall, blocking her escape. I thought we weren't doing this anymore, Gray sighed. No secrets, we're partners. Probably not after I'm finished. She futilely tried to push her way through his blockade. I know what she asked you to do was unfair. Look, I don't have time for this. If she hadn't been in such a rush, she might have appreciated his non-judgmental tone. But time was not on her side, and she had too long a journey ahead of her. Move, she snapped at him. Only if I come with you. You're not. She stumbled over the angry reply teetering on the edge of her tongue as she struggled with her brain to comprehend his offer. Wait, what? You want to help? Mocking and contempt were the usual armor he donned when heading into battle of wills with Sage, but as she searched his face for signs of an ulterior motive, she found only reflection of empathy in Gray's eyes. It never gets any easier. I'm sorry. Ava asked you to do something awful, right? Maybe, Sage shrugged, arming herself with cool detachment to shield her unease. Smart-ass comments she could handle, but this sudden softness in Gray's manner left no target for her to unleash her overflowing rage on. Obviously, tough girl. Gray let slip a small hint of the real him peeking through his Boy Scout facade. And here I find you running, but not in fear. You've got that insane look you get when you're about to go do something brilliantly stupid. I don't have a look, she bristled at his insinuation. He hadn't known her long enough to assign motives to her expressions. Oh, really? Gray replied without missing a beat. You had the same look the night we went to interrogate the vampire coven. Maybe a little less leather this time, but just as determined to head into hell guns a-blazing. He had her there, but if she admitted it, he'd never let her go. She scrambled for something to tell him, but came up short. If I were a betting man, Gray began, folding his arms, narrowing his eyes. He looked her up and down as if searching for clues. I'd guess the deed Ava demanded isn't done yet, because you found another way around it. Not completely true. The tough girl look wasn't working on him. She should have known better. He wasn't the type to be intimidated, and they had agreed to start acting like partners. Coming clean might even buy her some time, something she desperately needed. You tried and it backfired? He cocked his head sideways, worry creeping into his expression for the first time. Am I that transparent? Like a ghost, only paler. The forced smile that he plastered across his face, to mask the fear reflecting in his eyes, was revealing. Let me help you. Can I trust you? We're partners, right? Gray stepped to the side, a gesture of goodwill allowing her to pass. I'm about to do something extremely stupid, Sage admitted with a heavy sigh. Obviously. And dangerous. Captain Obvious, he saluted her. I've got your back. So you can have a good show of me getting my ass handed to me? Laughter was the best medicine, or so they said. Maybe we should pick some popcorn along the way? She refused to admit it out loud, but knowing that someone was on her side, even if they couldn't join her for the final battle, did help. Unfortunately, when the time comes, I have to do the deed alone. That's not happening, partner. He punctuated the last word with laser-like focus, staring Sage down with a look that could rival Ava's in intensity. Truth time, Gray demanded. Let's hear the plan. Cameras lined the hallways, and the walls had ears. Step into my office, she urged him into the elevator. Gray followed without protest, and they rode down to the parking garage in silence and walked casually towards his bike. She kept her eyes peeled, looking for signs of alarm. She was hoping to avoid a fight, and at the same time, wondering why no one had stopped her, or Gray. Ava had called for Alteras to return to the building. Something was off. But this time, The longer she waited to act, the closer Matt might be to death. So she couldn't wait any longer. Code word. Sage restarted the conversation before they mounted his bike. She hoped that they would remember their last mission and the important artifact everyone had been so keen to kill each other to get their hands on. Confusion played across Gray's brow, aging him beyond his normal youthful appearance, and Sage struggled to find a way to say what she needed without actually speaking the word. How do you terminate a Djinn? She asked. Destroy their talisman, he replied almost immediately. Didn't you find it odd that Ava sent me to guard Luke if we both know he came here willingly? She wanted you to end him. Gray scratched at his chin, and she could almost see the wheels turning in his head. And how could I terminate a Djinn if we're not in control of his talisman? Thinking always looked like such a painful experience for Gray. Sage expected to see smoke rising from his ears with all the mental effort he seemed to be exerting. You couldn't, unless... Realization sparked behind his eyes. Code word. You mean this... Don't say it. Sage glanced around to see if anyone else might have heard. There were fewer cameras here in the garage. She turned away from the one that she could see and purposefully patted the spot where her necklace lay under her shirt. Guard duty. Then she pointed to him. Babysitter. Anger narrowed Gray's eyes, but he nodded all the same. Makes perfect sense now. So you understand why I was assigned this job? No, you're a newbie. We have hundreds of capable agents who could have handled a job like this. But the secret would be revealed if Ava asked anyone else to take this on. After what happened with Rena, this is my full-time job as guardian. How long have you had it? She shook her head. No more questions. And you have to promise me this goes no further than you and me. I'm not even supposed to tell you. Didn't we agree to be partners? This goes way beyond partners. You take this to your grave. She hoped she hadn't just made the hugest mistake by telling him, but what choice did she have? I know nothing. I say nothing. I swear. He crossed himself and held up a 3-finger salute. Back to being the Boy Scout. If not for the stress threatening to break her, Sage might have laughed at his attempt to be funny. Okay, partner. Sage mounted the bike, pulled her helmet on. Since I'm the babysitter, what's my role in your plan? Gray fixed his helmet and brought the bike to life. I have to go in alone. Sage urged him to agree without asking too many questions. Nope. He revved the bike and sped out of the parking garage before she could protest. Chapter 29. Gray pulled into the visitor parking lot just outside of Sage's apartment complex. Evening was in full bloom, with half moon shining down from a cloudless sky. All seemed business as usual, but Sage knew better. Her gut churned with worry for Matt. They'd ridden down from A.S.S.E.T at breakneck speed, but had that been fast enough? Had the master, tired of waiting for her, taken out her aggression on Matt? That was the thought that made her blood boil. I mean it. Alone, Sage warned Gray as she pulled off her helmet, ready to bolt through the night gate, guns ablazing. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and she stopped dead before taking her first step. Unseen eyes were on her already. The master, Luke, or worse. Goosebumps spread down her arms, and Sage turned around slowly, scanning the shadows for a hint of anything out of place. Gray cleared his throat, but before he had the chance to speak, she held up a hand to shush him. You sense that? She whispered. The parking lot, she realized, was unusually packed with cars for a weeknight. Nearly every space was taken. Dread festered in her belly, threatening to explode from her throat. Something is out there, waiting for me or you, maybe both. Streetlights failed to illuminate the whole parking lot, leaving too many places in shadow. This isn't a good idea. Gray yanked her arm back before she could take off. We need backup. She couldn't deny his truth, but the trap had already been sprung, and they were here. For better or worse, it was time to face the music. No time. Sage pulled free of his grip. They've got my roommate. Gray sighed, sounding as though he had already accepted defeat. Look, I know you love Matt. I'm going to stop you right there before you say something you can never take back. He doesn't die on my watch. He means more to me than anything else. You understand? We do this together. He cut the engines and pulled off his own helmet. I'm not letting my partner walk into a trap alone. Fine, whatever. Let's hurry. She looked over her shoulder toward the far end of the parking lot, and something glinted in the darkness. Gray dug into his saddlebag and pulled out his favorite twin machetes. Trap or not, we at least have some protection. Had she thought about weapons before leaving, Sage would have brought a few extra shiny pointy things herself. Her pocket knife would do little good in comparison. A reflection caught her eye again, only a few car lengths away this time. Whatever it was out there, it was on the move. But like a trick of the mind, when Sage focused on the last place she saw, the light vanished into shadow. What? Gray asked suspiciously. Are you ready? Sage shouldered her bag, ready to head into the apartment complex. A trick. It had to be a stupid trick, like Luke was using his magic or something to distract her and keep her from making it to the apartment. She refused to look again, though the weight of those unseen eyes pressed down on the back of her neck, taunting her. Machetes in hand, Gray took the lead. Not wanting to be left behind, Sage nearly beat him, racing to the gate. A blast of cold wind hit Sage like a tornado, and she struggled to keep her feet planted on the ground as the angry air swirled around her. One of Gray's weapons sailed through the air and narrowly missed her head. Gray hit the ground next to her, still holding the other machete. What the hell? Sage spun with the wind, hoping to finally glimpse the thing stalking them, but found only disappointing shadows as the cyclone abated. Frustration, and more than a little scared, Sage let out a growl loud enough to rival any werewolf. Show yourself, Luke! The Djinn isn't so friendly now, is he? Gray retrieved his fallen blade. With practiced precision, he swung the machetes around, adjusting his grip, and by the time he found his feet, he looked ready to fight. Sage nearly called him Captain Obvious, but thought better of it, seeing as he was the only one with weapons. Gray circled around quickly, giving the parking lot a once-over. Based on the growl that came from his throat, he had come to the same conclusion she had. We're being played, Sage whispered under her breath. Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. Gray held out one of the machetes for her to take. Back-to-back formation. You keep watching your side, and I'll take mine. Aren't you both adorable? A female voice, the same one that had baited Sage to come, taunted them from the shadows. Watching the two of you work together has been so much fun. But I must admit, it's more entertaining when you bicker. Who the hell was she? Not sure if you're going for cowardly or intimidating with this whole hiding in the darkness crap. Sage matched her tone as best she could. Her nerves on edge, it was all she could do to keep her voice from cracking. Either way, your methods are really annoying. You are so cute, I could just eat you up, the woman giggled. Hope you like heartburn, Sage quipped. Oh, we're not at the main course yet. I set this all up for maximum dramatic impact. The voice came from a different angle this time, but Sage failed to see any shifting in the light or shadow to match the movement. No tears, no pleading. I just don't think you're properly motivated to continue this game. Just ignore and keep moving. Gray took Sage's hand roughly and pulled her towards the apartment complex gate. Sage bit back the snarky comment she had locked and loaded to fire. Matt was the goal. Ensuring his safety was all that mattered. After that, she'd school the disembodied voice on the ways of the troll. Did I give you permission to walk this way? The woman's voice grew louder. Sage finally caught sight of her. From a distance, she appeared like a small brown blur, small as a child from what Sage could tell. The little creature's form hadn't quite come into focus. Cloaked from head to toe, even as she came closer, their enemy remained completely anonymous. Brownie? Gray didn't sound entirely sure as he spoke the word. You've been warned. Attack us and we'll end you. Prisoners just mean more paperwork, and I don't have time to file. The cloaked woman disappeared as soon as Sage had spotted her, childlike giggling surrounding them. But Sage guessed it was another trick. She'd already shown her speed. Sage stopped, turning around to get a good look. There was no point in wasting any more energy to play a losing game. It was time for Sage to be the game master. I think this little trickster's scared of you, Gray. If she were smart, she would be, he replied. Standing back to back, Sage felt every twitch and tremble of Gray's muscles. Coiled up like a spring, he'd burst into action at the slightest attack. A fight on open ground would be best, but the way this woman was playing in the shadows, Sage wondered if she could provoke her enough to come out and play. I wouldn't go as far as that, Sage scoffed. Smart people don't provoke a Terra in the first place. The woman appeared again from the corner of Sage's eye. Oh, this one has spunk. A brown blur darkened to russet red as it swept past Sage's hand, knocking the machete from her grip. I might even keep her around a little longer, seeing as how she's brought me another sacrifice. Sage slid her hand down and retrieved the small pocket knife from her bag. The way the woman spoke sounded as if she were talking to another person. Luke, most likely? As much as she had tried to help in the past, the presence of his master... as much as he had tried to help her in the past, in the presence of his master, Sage couldn't count on Luke. He was her enemy now. You want Gray? Sage forced her voice to remain steady. Take him. He's a pain in my ass anyway. Gray bumped against her back with a grunt of frustration. Already bargaining for your life. The woman sounded truly amused by that prospect. All in good time, but let's not rush the fun. I want to savor it. It's not often I get to play with Terras. Well, you should have said something earlier. I might have invited you to game night. It's kind of my thing, Sage said. You play at Magic, little girl. No reward for all the effort you put into these games of yours. The woman's laughter turned sinister. I play for keeps. Not nice to play with other people's toys, though, Sage warned. People tend to get angry and take them back. Let them try, the woman answered. Show yourself and I will. Sage put all the strength into her voice as she delivered the threat. You must think so little of me to suggest I'd fall for a ruse as simple as that. The voice surrounded them again, which tells me you still haven't figured out my identity. Only because you're too scared to reveal yourself. Gray said it before Sage had the chance to. Since you adore games so much, how about we play something fun? The woman teased. I don't have time. Busy schedule and all. I have to kill you and save my friend. Rain check? Sage quipped. So cute. The woman giggled again, sounding more pleased with herself than Sage's reply. But this game I think you'll like. Answer my riddle and I'll release your friend. If only it were that easy. Sage struggled to see the angle, knowing it had to be a trap, but she couldn't do anything. She had to save her roommate. Eager to give him up? I know how you feel. Men are such funny creatures. I'd be happy to take him off your hands. Sage held her breath, waiting to see how the woman would reply. All that mattered was saving Matt. Eager? No, she scoffed. There's no need for extra baggage now that I have you here, and besides, I'm bored with him. I have 2 new play toys right in front of me. Anxiety formed a knot in Sage's throat. She swallowed hard and set her jaw, determined to fight the good fight to the bitter end. Fine. What was your riddle again? Simple. Who am I? She surrounded them with cackling laughter, and once the sound faded, the eerie quiet settled over Sage and Gray. Not Sylvia, Sage whispered to herself. No mistaking that haughty tone, though the woman taunting them did remind her of the shade and personality. Not the brownie, Gray suggested, but similar in size. It has to be someone we've come across. She wants us to figure it out. She's toying with us. Her identity is an important detail. Sage didn't care who had heard her as she jumped through the mental loops of deduction. The Gemini twins, or at least one of them? Gray suggested, but immediately shook his head. No, that doesn't seem right. They're tall and slender. That wouldn't be them. Glamour? Sage said, and immediately rejected the idea. She could see through that kind of magic. Never mind. Give me more clues, Sage demanded. Female, Gray replied. Small, quick, tricky. Trickster! Sage almost shouted the word. What was Sylvia's assistant? Kitsune. Yes, that does make sense, Gray nodded. Thalia, Sage cried out. A flash of light nearly blinded Sage. In the haze that followed, Clapping echoed around them. Very good. You can have your friend now. When the light's blindness faded, Sage pushed her eyes to focus on the figure struggling at the ground at her feet. It was a man, but not the one that she considered a friend. Zack. Great. Sage groaned, disappointed at her prize. Where's Matt? Oh, did you think I meant the human? Thalia giggled with amusement. Silly me, I forgot to specify which one of your toys I'd grown tired of. Where is my roommate? Sage demanded. No more games. I want him released now, safe and alive. Oh, honey, haven't you learned? No man is worth getting that worked up over. She continued to taunt with laughter. But if you must, we could bargain. You know exactly where he is, but my price for that toy is much higher. Why not take what I've generously given you and leave while you still can? You know I won't do that. Sage had enough talking and playtime. She needed a target for her anger. As soon as she came face to face with that tricky little fox, she'd muzzle the beast permanently. Cut the crap and let's settle this now. My game. We play by my rules. Thalia clicked her tongue. If you're ready to move up to level 2, you know where to find me. Her voice faded into the breeze. Chapter 30. I'm not even going to ask how you got caught up in this. Sage bent down and untied Zack. You sure? It's a harrowing tale filled with mystery and intrigue. He rubbed at the raw spots where the ropes had bitten into his wrist. The raw and angry marks faded almost instantly, leaving no trace of the injury he'd just sustained. And I hear it ends with a kiss. Zack puckered and leaned towards Sage. She made a fist and held it up to Zack's lips. I prefer stories with a little more action. Well, that's the best part. The brave heroine saving the poor, defenseless vampire. He made a show of kissing her knuckles, standing with a smile so wide he couldn't hide his teeth. I am forever in your debt. Don't let that go to your head, Sage grumbled. What? Your noble sacrifice come to save poor little me? Zack winked at her. I never read more into that. Good. Insufferable flirt. That man just didn't know when to quit, and she'd had just about enough. Because I thought I was saving Matt. The man, who always had a witty remark, locked and loaded, stood with his mouth gaping. She'd stung him that time. But, fun as it was to take the wind from Zack's sails, there was no time to waste with her roommate still in danger. How did you get messed up in this, vampire? Gray broke through the uneasy silence. Stalking around Sage's home again? Funny you should say that, Zack chuckled nervously. I had come by to speak with her. Our last meeting didn't go as well as I intended. I believe I said I never wanted to see you again, Sage clarified. How long has he been bothering you? Gray inserted himself between Sage and Zack. No. Zack seemed to shrink. He took an unsteady step backwards. No, nothing like that. Actually, he did threaten to bite me, Sage smirked. Gray wouldn't kill the vampire, but he would definitely be able to take him down a few pegs, humble him a little. He said he wanted to show me the dark side. What? Gray's fist tightened around the handles of his machetes. The muscles in his arms tensed and trembled, ready for action. Taken completely out of context, I assure you, Zack replied. Gray stared down at the vampire as if wondering which body part he'd like to dismember first. Give me one good reason. She needed someone to make her see the truth. Zack glanced down to the weapons and back up to Gray. The implied threat seemed to trigger his darker half. Zack rose up to his full height, standing his ground. Tough love. Not your place, vampire, Gray growled. She's my partner and mine to protect. Should I congratulate you then on the smashing job you've done thus far? Zack's reply came quickly, with a heavy dose of snark. If you paid any attention at all to Sage, I would never have had the chance to get close to her. If you were the gentleman you pretended to be, you'd know better than to get close to her, alone. Gray looked to Sage as if checking to make sure she was still there. She's innocent. Sage had only intended to embarrass the vampire, but the way the boys were working themselves up to a fight made her feel ashamed. She'd opened her mouth to interrupt, but couldn't manage to get a word in. Which is exactly why I had to make her see the danger. You haven't properly prepared her, and you left her vulnerable. Zack stepped in closer now, jabbing a finger at Gray's chest. For God's sake, she was living right next to a damn Djinn, and you didn't catch on until it was too late. Sage held her breath, waiting to see if Gray would retaliate. As tense as he looked, when that man started swinging his machete blades, heads would roll. I'll give you that. Gray heaved a sigh. Not the response that Sage had expected, but better than bloodshed. Touch me again, however, and you lose the finger. Save your threats for the real villains, Zack rolled his eyes, but dropped his arms to his side all the same. While you swoop in to take advantage of the vulnerable and innocent women, Gray lobbed the insult at him with almost a lazy drawl. I don't have to take anything. Women give it willingly. Zack didn't have the chance to finish. The moment he uttered those words, Gray dropped his machetes and threw a punch like a cannon blast at the vampire's face. Lost in their testosterone-filled pissing match, they'd either forgotten or didn't care that the mission hadn't ended, and Sage wasn't about to wait for them to realize their mistake. She used their diversion to sneak away. Matt was still in the hands of Thalia, and Sage knew exactly what that little fox wanted in exchange. Her life for his. No questions asked. All right, we're going to stop there because we're right at about 30 minutes. And things are getting exciting. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 chapters left. So next week we will probably finish. I'm excited. So now we know who the villain is. Did anybody figure out who the villain was beforehand? Were you paying attention? What do you think? Let me check in with our chat room, see who's here today. We got Regine as soon as YouTube loads. I try and give it a little gap time too. When I start the video, I give it like, 20 seconds or so before I really jump into it, hoping that people will be able to catch on. Always ready for the fun. Thank you, Rebecca. And yes, I am working on what I owe you. The story should be done in 2 weeks, as promised. Cheesy grin. That quote is dirty. Oh, what quote? What quote? Brilliantly stupid. Yes, Sage is brilliantly stupid. Like a ghost only paler. Yeah. She did what with her voice? Oh, and I got to go back and see. Did I flub over something? I probably did. And we got Joe. Hey, Joe, how's it going? I did not guess. So nobody guessed this time around. Poopies. Okay. That was one of the things with this series is I was trying to keep the mystery angle alive and keep people guessing towards the end. But if you weren't guessing, I guess I wasn't strong enough on this one to make you want to guess. Things to go back and look at. But we still have 2 more books in the series. So when this one is done next week, I will put up the poll and we'll see if you guys want to continue with Agents of A.S.S.E.T series, because there's 2 more books in that one, or if another series would be interesting to start. We'll let you guys decide. I'm okay with moving on to the next one if you are, because I do love this series. And it does kind of help me as I'm working on book 5 very, very slowly. Now that I've figured out why I hated book 5 and why I couldn't I couldn't finish it because it wasn't making sense to me. I think it'll be a lot stronger. So this is kind of helping me stay in kind of Sage's mind as I work through the problems and the revisions. So it's a good thing to keep reading. Sneaking off without saying anything issue is such a character. That is so Sage. That is so Sage. But she knows she's got to go in there alone. She can't have Zack being stupid. She can't have Gray trying to protect her because she has the only weapon that's going to be effective. And she's got to be able to use it. How she's going to use it, we'll see, because that could cause more problems. And I won't say anything more than that because I don't want to give it away. But next week should be very interesting. I hope you guys will be there with me because I can't wait to read I love getting to the end. And fun fact about all of the A.S.S.E.T books, they all end on the same word. Every single book so far has ended with the same word, and I'm hoping to keep that trend going. Suggestion for writing book 5: if you want a big bad reveal, watch Scooby-Doo episodes. Jinkies. All right, so before I go, I hope everyone is doing good this week. I can't believe we're already almost done with April and it's moving into May. This year has flown by so fast. We'll be coming into summer soon. And with summer right around the corner, I want to plan some more things for my channel. So I'm asking you guys, as my loyal 3 followers, what kind of things you would like to see me do on the channel. I do have some of my seminar recordings up here. I've been doing a seminar series for the last couple of weeks with the Henderson Libraries about story crafting. So plot structure, learning how to self-edit, getting over writer's block, tips and tricks, things like that. So if that's something you want to see me post more of, I can do that. These chapter readings I do once a week. If a better day would be for these chapter readings than Sunday, let me know, because I want to give you guys what you want, and I also want to make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible. So think about that. Let me know in the comments section, and be sure to hit that like button. My goal for likes on this video is 10 likes, so help me get to 10 likes this week. I think it's achievable. Anyways, I will talk to you guys next week with the grand finale. Tell a friend. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I love you guys. I will see you next time.